Alright, look, I hate to break it to you, but the next generation iPhones with the 12S or the 13 or whatever they call it, they sound kind of boring. Okay, it's gonna be like same design, slightly thicker, still a notch, still OLED displays, you might get 120 hertz on the Pro models, but other than that, it doesn't sound very interesting. But what I realize we haven't talked much about recently is the third generation of the iPhone SE, which may be coming sooner than some people think, and simultaneously later than some people think. It's kind of weird. Let's begin. The reason I kind of was sparked the idea of talking about it is because we have a somewhat reliable leaker, Mac Takara, claiming that we're going to get a third generation iPhone SE by April of this year, so only like a quarter away, which is definitely coming out of left field. It feels like most leakers and most analysts have kind of died down on the idea of the iPhone SE, which in case you didn't know, Apple has branded stuff with SE in the past, and it normally stood for Special Edition. So if Apple decided releasing an SE every single year, would it be that special? I don't know. You know, Apple does weird things with the naming and the marketing, so I guess there's nothing inherent that says that if it's called the SE, it can't come out every year, but it just feels a little bit bizarre when the first iPhone SE came out in 2016, and then we didn't get another iPhone SE until the start of 2020, and it was cool, but keep in mind that we were covering leaks and reports for it for basically over 2 years. Ever since 2018, we were talking about the idea of a second generation iPhone SE, and there were all kinds of leaks and rumors going around. Oh, this is going to be the year, you know, it's going to look like the iPhone 5, but with a full screen design, and boy, we were wrong there. But eventually it morphed into the iPhone 12 mini. This is basically what a lot of those SE2 rumors were saying, and there's definitely a lot of fake stuff out there, and especially with Mac and Takara, they are dropping just like crazy leaks lately. They've been dropping a bunch of stuff, and Apple Track has their score at around 68%, which is, you know, not terrible, but at the same time, it means there's a decent chance a lot of the things they've reported on in the past week, likely some of them are going to end up not being true. And if I had to guess, this SE3 leak is most likely the one I have doubts about, because for one, they didn't say much about it. All they said was that there would be a third generation SE coming out in April. They didn't give us specs, they didn't give us the display size, they didn't give us the chip. And you know, last year there were some rumors floating around about an SE Plus, so I think maybe that's what a lot of people are hoping for, but honestly, I think that now that the iPhone XR starts at $499 and the SE from last year starts at $399, I can't tell if there's much room in the lineup for an SE Plus. Don't get me wrong, it would be really cool if they kind of brought back the iPhone 8 Plus design, except with an updated A14 chip, give it some extra portrait mode features on that camera. You know, I'm for options, and I bet a lot of people out there that prefer the home button or prefer a 16:9 display or prefer having Touch ID, I bet the SE Plus would probably sell pretty well. But the thing is, anytime Apple has like discontinued the design of something and they're no longer selling that footprint or that design in any phone anymore, I've never seen them brought it back before, you know? So when they discontinued the iPhone 5C, it didn't come back. Or when they discontinued the 5S, they replaced it with the SE. So typically they keep that assembly line running if they plan on using it later. And the fact that when the iPhone SE second generation came out last year, that's when they discontinued the 8 Plus, and now they're not even selling it on the certified refurbished page. They're not even selling the 8 Plus on the clearance side of the website. So my guess is, you know, because they haven't been selling the 8 Plus in over a year, those assembly lines with the 5.5-inch LCD panels and the bigger iPhone but still with a home button, that factory line is probably not even operational anymore, and it was likely retrofitted to start building something else. You know, all the crazy LiDAR sensors for the Pro series, which is in high demand, I guess. But my prediction is that this is not an SE Plus, and if I am gonna go with someone I believe in for the third generation iPhone SE, it's gotta be Ross Young, because he's had a lot of contacts with supply chains and figuring out what Apple is going to do with their next generation iPhones. And the reason I have a lot of restored faith in Ross Young right now is he was like the one guy who was saying that Apple would not have 120 hertz iPhones in 2020, when all the other leakers and everyone else was talking about, oh yeah, 120 hertz, it's gonna happen, trust me, 120 hertz, it's real, it's gonna be a thing on this year's Pro iPhones. He was the one guy that was like, I'm talking with supply chains and they don't have the driver ICs, so iPhones aren't gonna have 120 hertz this year. And a lot of people doubted him, but he ended up being right. And he's not right on everything, but still, he gave a more recent report suggesting that there would be a third generation iPhone SE, but not until the spring of 2022. But what is it, right? Like, there's all this chit chat. What's the great specs? What's the design? Well, essentially, it sounds like for the next generation SE, they want to recycle the iPhone 11 design, still rocking a 6.1 inch LCD display, and even still rocking a dual camera on the back, which would be a first for the SE branding to have two cameras, and of course, whatever the latest generation chip is at that time. So if it's 2022, that could very likely mean an A15 chip. And the interesting part of this report is it suggests that the next generation SE is still going to be rocking Touch ID, not Face ID. And because it's so far in the future, very likely this could change. And honestly, I kind of doubt this part of the report. I think it's more likely for them to just bring Face ID to the cheaper SE, and by that time they can, sustainably produce an iPhone 11 looking iPhone and still only charge like $399 for it. But you will get Face ID. It will even have a mild version of 5G, maybe not the millimeter wave, but the 5G that most of us actually end up using. And with the A15 chip in there, maybe they can bring night mode to a few other of the sensors. But of course, a lot of this is speculation at this point, and it's possible maybe Mac and Takara is right on this, but a lot of people are speculating that because there's not much to say about it, but they're just saying it's 3 months away, maybe this is just the exact same footprint as last year's iPhone SE, still the 4.7 inch design, except this time they're throwing a A14 chip in there. It won't be a big deal. There won't be much to talk about. They'll just be like, hey, the new iPhone SE that we just refreshed is even faster than last year's SE. And who knows, maybe that A14 chip allows them to bring night mode to the older camera. I don't know. But I just like talking and speculating about what the next cheaper iPhone can be, because you got to be careful with it. You can't just give it everything. You can't just make it amazing. Otherwise, it's going to cannibalize iPhone 12 and 13 sales. So you have to make it bad enough to justify the lower price, but at the same time better than the SE2. So I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting debate to have, and I'm curious what you guys would like to see in a third generation SE. My guess is we're not getting one this year, and you probably are going to have to wait till 2022. And when we do get it, it will look more like an iPhone 11 than anything. But do you guys think the SE Plus could actually end up happening? Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Shape here. I'll see you guys in the next one.